In today's episode, we will dive into something really interesting, this conversation about parenting. It's really about attunement, what it is and what it isn't, how to help kids recover from big emotions, disciplining without damaging connection, developing disciplines relationally, creating routines that strengthen relationships. I'm Monica with CFT Institute. We train therapists, counselors, and spiritual leaders in a framework approach that integrates neuroscience with faith. And today I'm here with Jessica Waters, a licensed therapist who actually works with me here at the Center for Family Transformation in North Carolina. Jessica is our resident specialist who works with children and parents, and she has a lot to say about parenting and family dynamics. Today, we are starting with something every parent is talking about right now, the gentle parenting debate. Let me set the stage first so we'll all be on the same page. Gentle parenting is an approach that emphasizes empathy, respect, and understanding over punishment. Instead of timeouts or consequences, gentle parents focus on connection, validating feelings, and teaching through conversation. The idea is to raise emotionally intelligent kids who cooperate because they feel understood, not because they fear consequences. But this has been a massive debate. There is a huge backlash online. Critics are saying gentle parenting is creating entitled kids who can't handle boundaries, who expect constant negotiation, and who melt down when life doesn't accommodate their feelings. Supporters say that the problem isn't gentle parenting itself, it's that parents are misunderstanding it and becoming permissive. Jessica, I'm so glad to be with you today. I know you and I get to be with each other quite a bit. Several times a week we're sitting one-on-one, but can you tell our audience how you got started as a therapist and specifically as a therapist who works with children?
Yeah, so my husband and I are also youth pastors. And so really desiring to be a therapist was just wanting to be able to help on a deeper level. That it's like we saw the concerns, we saw the hurt and the pain. And so really wanting to have skills to be able to help our next generation navigate really difficult things. And so that turned into being able to be licensed and being able to work on the team at Center for Family Transformation. And then just being able to
Mm.
kind of uh, work with a lot of these kids and families and just be able to help as much as I
Yes, and you
can.
do a
So,
great job. I love working with you. I love being able to share clients with you, families, especially we're both sex addiction therapists, so we're seeing people who have a lot of pain going on in their family dynamic with infidelities and things like this and the children involved. And so I really admire how you come alongside children and parents as they navigate really tough waters. And so in terms of the gentle parenting debate, like what are some of your thoughts? What do you think in terms of, how that fits with how we do therapy here at our center?
yeah. I think with the life model, it really does feel like such a balance that there is this attunement that is so important, and that we definitely don't want to overlook. And there's also the discipline part and the part where we get to sit down with parents and we get to help them strengthen their brain so that they're the most dominant brain, but that they're the gentle protector. That we get to parent these little humans who have their own brains and get to make their own decisions. And so we get such a unique opportunity to be able to attune with them, to help them navigate really difficult things. And we also, yeah, want to make sure like we check ourselves as parents of like what's the part that's just wanting me to give in to whatever they want. And making sure that are we are setting those spaces up and those boundaries for them so that they learn all of the skills they need to grow into
Yes,
healthy
that's
adults.
that's what we talk a lot about at our center, don't we? Like prevention. How do we help kids grow into the
Mhm.
healthiest adults they can be? And so you're using this word attunement, which I know is one of the concepts from from the curriculum that we really love, the 4 habits for joyful kids and what you've written. written extensively about as well. So you've thrown out now this word attunement. Can you tell me what you think of when you say the word attunement and how it's different than just being quote unquote present with your child?
Yeah, I think when I think of attunement, it feels more like being able to sit with the child and be present, and also helping them to name what's going on for them, helping them not feel alone in whatever big emotion they're feeling. That it is such a difficult phase, that we have these kids and their brains aren't fully developed, and so as an adult, we can come in and be like, why does that feel so big? Like, what's going on? But to be able to attune with them, and I just imagine, like these toddlers who are, navigating disappointment or things like that, and just being able to come alongside and be like, wow, like I understand how big that disappointment feels for you right now. And really being able to sit with them in that, and help them return to joy. That's always, the goal is to be able to help their brains learn these paths back from these difficult emotions back to joy, with the hope that someday they can do it on their own. But we get to sit and help them, especially when they're
That's
little.
great.
So,
And so you said especially when they're little, but we need to do that throughout their adolescence and development, correct? I mean, there's a skill set I think that a parent can learn with a child, well, a child under 12, but then what about teenagers? Does it look different from your perspective when the child becomes a young adult and an adolescent?
yeah. When I think about teenagers, it's ideally if they've learned these skills and they know kind of how to navigate some of these problematic emotions, and get back to joy, that they are growing in that capacity to be able to do that kind of on their own, and to be able to navigate some of those things, and also to be able to help those around them navigate difficult emotions. And I think of, some of the teenagers that don't have all the skills that they need yet and don't know how to recover. And so it can be a little bit difficult to attune with teenagers, who maybe are uncomfortable with the problematic emotions. That it's really difficult to acknowledge and attune that because it feels so big for them, and they feel like they
Mhm.
don't have the skills to navigate it. And so it can be really difficult. Like, I do see those attuning with a toddler and attuning with a teenager being very difficult, in that sometimes even with a teenager, you've gotta be, really careful, because you don't want, to bring something into their awareness that they're not ready for if they don't have the
Yeah,
skills
that's
to
so
navigate
good.
those things. So,
That's so good, Jessica. It's so true. As parents, we need to attune to each of our children individually, but then also work through our own stuff, right? So that we can be
mhm,
present for them. And I think as parents, we can look back and think about how, the generations past haven't attuned, and what the effect of that
mm,
has been on our lives. And so that takes us to another topic, another concept from this Four Habits curriculum, and that's the building bounce concept, right? Like, what does that
mm.
mean? Can you explain to parents what the concept of bounce is?
Yeah, when I think of bounce, they talk about it, like a ball, that it's like the more, joy that you have is like the air in the ball. So really even shifting from a, like, consequence, or like, well, how do I navigate, the hard punishment parts, to more of like the joy. Like, how are we building joy? How do we have this joyful relationship with our children, that we're glad to be with them no matter what's going on, and modeling that. And so, really building bounce is about, in that emotional resiliency, is about how much joy do they have? Because the more joy, the more joyful connection that they're making, the easier it'll be for them to bounce back from these difficult emotions, that they won't get so stuck in them, because they
Right.
know what it feels like, to have joyful relationship and joyful
Yep.
connection. And so that's the part of building bounce, is like how much joy, and how do we just continue to
Mhm.
increase, those joy and those healthy, joyful
Yes,
habits in our
that's excellent.
families.
And there's this idea of almost like uh, in the resiliency, like a flexibility emotionally, right? Like we could be very rigid in
Mm,
our emotions
mhm,
and in stuck, and then we have the tantrums or the complete shutdowns. Versus there's this resiliency
mm,
and ability to kind of get through life's storms. And I think that's what you're talking about with the building balance. And that leads us
mm,
into this idea of connecting with care. That's another concept that you talk a lot about, and that's a big one. Tell us what you think that actually
mm.
looks like in real life. What does it look like when a parent can actually connect with care?
Yeah, I notice correcting with care being very uh, relationship based and like focused on pulling out the truth. Or hang on, let me restart that. I noticed that correcting with care is more about pulling out their true identity. So it's that, who are they created to be? Because a lot of times when we notice difficult behaviors, they're acting more out of like a wounded heart or a woundedness. And so to be able to attune and to notice, what that emotion is underneath, but then that correction comes from that place of like, and we know who you were created to be. And so when this behavior happens, um, it doesn't line up with who we know you to be. And so it's coming from such a loving
Mhm.
um and joyful place that can be sometimes more easily received than like those messages of like, we want to avoid the messages of like, you're a
Mhm.
bad kid, or
Mhm.
you are, you are X, Y, and Z. It's like we want
Right.
them to have that healthy, true identity of, I know my value and I know my worth. And when I had these behaviors, they didn't line up with who I'm
Yes, I
created to
love
be.
that. I think that's such an important point. I think to even think of my own childhood or those that I work with or my own children, it's so easy when you are disciplining and bringing that correction to not give the children their true identity, right? And that's so important. And that brings us to this fourth habit, this idea of developing disciplines relationally. How do we show up relationally? And how is that different than the traditional discipline that a lot of us received or were given in our own childhoods, right? How do you think of that this relational approach as being different than the traditional?
Yeah, I think of, that we want them to learn the skills, right? It's like we have these things that it's like we want them to be able to take care of themselves, and we want them to be able to do all of these things as adults. And so that developing disciplines relationally is really, I love in the book where it talks about how we're monitoring for their overwhelm, right? That we're watching for that overwhelm, and we're trying um to help them learn this skill without getting to a place of, like, frustration or, like, "I can't do it," like,
Yeah.
it's just too hard, that it's like, we're navigating that with them, and it's like, "Okay, well, do we need a break for just a minute? And then we can get back to," then we can vacuum the whole living room, or, whatever it would be, but it's like teaching them these skills, and, it's like things that they need to know, but it's like, how do we do it in a way that it doesn't feel, like, overwhelming where they're just like, "Well, I can never learn how to do that," that it's like we wanna help them navigate in these ways that we're learning these things, we're teaching these skills, and we're also doing it with um, such an awareness of, like, how they're doing emotionally as
Right, so
they're
we're
working
parenting,
on
but
these
we're
things.
not doing it without thinking of the child, it's not like the child is an object, they're a
Mhm.
specific person and they have a certain way of engaging in the world, and we wanna think about that and how we approach that child specifically in order to love them well and be relational. Yes, I totally agree, and I'm attuned with you in all of that. And I wanna transition a little bit here as we reach the end of our time together and just reach out to the practitioners who may be listening, the therapists, the counselors, the coaches who are working with parents and struggling with these same exact issues. What is What is something that you would say to who are craving more information about how to help? What's one thing you would take from our conversation today, Jessica, to say, "Hey, this is what I think you could implement immediately that can really be helpful with the parents and then subsequently the children that are coming into your office?"
Yeah, the one that comes to mind is really being able to model these things for the parents. That while we're talking about these things for their kids, being able to attune with the parents, like that. It's like, no, we get it. Like parenting is hard. It's exhausting. Having the big emotions and having to navigate your own emotions
Mhm.
while you're trying to help a little one, co-regulate, or a teenager who, doesn't know how to navigate and things like that. So I think really attuning with the parents that it's like, no, it's a really difficult um a thing to do right now, and we have such a complex society that they're growing up in. And so really being able to
Mhm.
practice that with them, and even noticing, how to help, the practical things to build joy in their families. Sometimes it's as simple as like, okay, eye contact when you're playing a game, having those moments of touch and connection, and like, how are we building joy as a family, so that they can, return from these difficult emotions. And then if there's things that the parents are doing that they're like, "Ugh, I feel bad because I, like, feel bad about myself because
Yeah.
I'm responding in this way," like, being able to pull out the parent's true identity, that it's like, "No, like, you are doing it, you were created for this, like, you are, like, God chose you to be this little one's parent," and so really being able to pull out that identity for them, and um, that they are that person, and so then they get to choose what they wanna do differently when a parent is overwhelmed, walking them through the same things that we're
Mhm.
walking kids through, and really being able to even be with parents and be like, "No, it makes sense. It's hard," and be able to kind of develop those things and watch for their own overwhelm. And so just being able to model that, I think, for the parents, like being that space for them, that it's like, hey, like I can be this space for you. It feels safe. You can feel like you can open up. That's what we're trying to replicate for these kids. That on a day-to-day basis, there's someone who's glad to be with them, even when they have
Yes.
big emotions.
Yes, Jessica, I love that final conversation you're having. Just the idea about modeling as a therapist. It reminds me of our module 2 training, right? That you are a part of. And
Mhm.
this idea of right brain psychotherapy. How do we really become an agent of healing as a helping professional? And so I see you modeling that in our office with the parents and families, the children that we serve. And I really appreciate that about you. I so appreciate you being on the call today. And I think there's so much more that you and I can talk about. We're probably going to have to get you back on this again at some point if you're okay with that. Yes, but you just have so much to offer, and I love hearing from you, and I know everyone else will as well. So it's something just as we finalize this here today, I just want to say that we both know that healing spreads when therapists live in joy. And
Mhm.
so I'm thankful that you're one of those people and that we're doing this together.
Mhm. Yes, yes. Thank you so much.